Good morning, everyone. It is 12:21 p.m. on Sunday, July 28th, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis, and kind of sort of got up and then went back to bed, and then here I'm up again. This is 5 more minutes. It's Sunday, so I'm going to be continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with Season 2, Episode 14, The Stanchurian Candidate. The reason I'm kind of moving so slow this morning is I definitely woke up with a migraine, and I will be okay, so it's fine. But, I'm not super great, but it's fine. Like, there's no need to, worry, but, yeah, I've got a headache, and it's like, blah. Anyway, the episode today is The Stanchurian Candidate, which honestly was a little too real for me in these current political times. The idea of the good guys faced with a horrible person going to be elected to a position of power, can't get their act together, and struggle to try to control their imperfect candidates. And their own conflict with each other is what risks the bad person being put into power. Yeah. So we begin the episode, though, with kind of a little bit of a montage, vignette of Stan feeling old and kind of useless. We start off with, he's got, another day, a new unidentified pain. And then he also is feeling like, people are kind of taking him for granted. Mabel uses his slippers to carry milk for some reason, so they're all soggy. Dipper used up all the light bulbs, so he can't replace the one, so he has to go to the store. People treat him like he's old. His smoke bomb is expired, so security beats him up when he tries to shoplift everything. The worst, right? And then when he gets home, Ford has already replaced the light bulb with a brand new one that'll last thousands of years and whose light makes your skin softer. And so Stan's just feeling kind of useless, which, I think is an interesting place to take the character right now, right? The kids are thrilled with the novelty of Ford, so, he kind of starts feeling like, well, what's his deal now? He was kind of, he's feeling a little left out and, like he doesn't have much to contribute anymore. And this is, kind of where things stand when everyone learns on the TV that the mayor, Mayor Eustace Carbone Befufflefumpter, oh, no, excuse me, Huckabone. Eustace Huckabone Befufflefumpter, who we are told was raised by bears, put up the big water tower, may have started World War I. And we're reminded also that he is the one that officially declared that Gideon, once his crimes were exposed, had to be sent to very real adult prison. And so we're reminded of that because we have to be reminded of Gideon because Gideon finally shows up again. And so we, now that the mayor has died, the town needs a new mayor. And I love the details of their ridiculous town charter and how silly their whole process is. With the stump speech and then the debate where townsfolk throw birdseed at their preferred candidate, so that at the end of the debate, when the Freedom Eagle is released, it will fly at the person who has the most birdseed and bestow upon them a birdly kiss, which is very silly, and I enjoy that quite a bit. And so immediately, Bud Gleeful, Gideon's dad, is the one who announces his candidacy and seems to expect that he will be running unopposed. He gives everyone coupons for 50% off a used car, which is a very silly take on the whole Oprah, everyone just check under your seats thing, because the whole idea of if you don't actually need a car, 50% off a used car is a weird gift. It kind of feels like you're being given more than you actually are. Although, theoretically, if any of them did need a car. But in any event, it's we're immediately suspicious of him through his association with Gideon. And so Stan insists that, he's not going to let Bud run unopposed. He's going to stop him. He runs himself. He kind of rallies up the townsfolk a little bit. And then lots of people run, although that feels like a weird, lots of people throw their hats in. But, of course, that doesn't, nothing really comes of that. But in any event, so now we've got Stan versus Bud. Bud insists that I was going to let bygones be bygones, but I'm going to win this anyway. And now that you've made an enemy of me, it's going to be bad when I win. And Stan looks a little bit concerned, like he hadn't thought of that. But I think we can understand, especially based on what we learn later, that, of course, it was never, they were already enemies. It was never, maybe Bud didn't have personal animosity against Stan, but given that Bud was always just a puppet candidate anyway. But so in any event, the Dipper and Mabel are suddenly worried that their only opposition to Bud Gleeful winning is Stan, who has all sorts of really unpopular opinions about things, and he's an old crank, and he's not necessarily. He goes on a disastrous radio interview where he's expressing opinions like teach kids swears, for example, and so the kids are worried. They go down and talk to Ford to express their concerns, and he shows them an old prototype of a mind-controlling tie he invented for Reagan's masters. Now, I think that this is really one of the first times, so we learned already when we learned Ford's backstory that his whole thing about building the portal was reckless, right? But it wasn't necessarily amoral per se, right? He was still just hopeful that it would be a good thing and kind of obsessed. But boy, mind-controlling ties are definitely not on the side of good in the world, right? And for him to not only have done that, but to actively suggest it to the kids, and then for the kids to take it up, I mean, they're desperate, but it's also it's a little bit interesting that, the lesson at the end of this is we should have trusted you or something like that, where maybe the idea of you should not use technology to control your friends and family's minds. It's maybe a larger principle there, but especially since they do it repeatedly to Seuss and never apologize to him, even though when they go to test it on him and Mabel just makes him dance around and sing, and he is terrified because he doesn't understand what happens. She tries it again and makes him eat a pine cone, and again, no apology at all. It's bizarre. I think that the episode is very deliberately trying to put us on the side of realizing the kids are in the wrong here, but that's a slightly weird position to take. It's not common for this show for them to make us feel that way and then also not really ever have them learn the lesson. Anyway, so they convince Stan to wear the tie, and so then there's this debate and the stump speech rather, and so they have Stan make a much more crowd-pleasing populist type of speech about America, freedom, and Amerifreedom, and he is, they essentially make him a much better candidate, and everyone in the town loves him. and then they have to, he doesn't remember the speech. He just understands, like, oh, everyone loves him now. And this is a little bit sad, right? Because it's the sort of, like, we can sort of see in him how starved he is for that sort of approval, and yet he doesn't understand what it was that they did, so he assumes that it's just really him that they like. And but then, of course, his ego takes over. He starts thinking he's the best regardless, and that maybe he doesn't need that tie. And then there's a whole issue where he doesn't want to wear the tie. The kids feel like, oh no, you have to wear the tie because otherwise you're going to say the wrong things. And they get into a big argument where Dipper angrily reveals the truth of the tie, at which point Stan is furious, hurt, reasonably so, but declares that he's going to run on his own without the tie. So now the kids are thinking he's definitely going to lose without the tie. Probably true. But what can they do? So they decide, let's make Seuss again run under our control. And it's one of those things where it's like there's not really any point in the episode where the kids are sort of forced to realize that that's not cool or apologize to Seuss. It's a little bit weird, actually. But in any event, we also see that after the stump speech, Bud is really worried about his polls, and this is where we get the big reveal that his campaign manager is actually Gideon from prison. And Gideon is furious that it's not going well, and so he uses his last resort and uses a possession spell on his dad. And this leads, of course, to him, doing Gideon things at the debate, which is very silly. And then, of course, the amazing visuals, evoking multiple comic book sources like Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Dr. Zola from comic books, and or Quato from Total Recall, where Bud is standing there like limp, while on his big belly he's got an iPad belt buckle with Gideon's face on. That is a ridiculous visual. But this is where it's all revealed. Gideon, through Bud, realizes that what the Dipper and Mabel must have been doing, because suddenly Seuss is talking like Stan was, Stan's talking different, figures out the whole thing, and then basically kidnaps them, ties them up inside the big statue being made of the former mayor, and is basically going to blow them up. And so the debate resumes. Stan is now realizing that now that he's doing it without the tie, that the kids were actually right, that he's not winning. The town doesn't love him this way. And he's, starting to get down, but then he realizes he hears Dipper and Mabel calling for help. And this is where his actual hero instinct kicks in. He's like, forget the debate. I've got to save my grandniece and grandnephew. And so he tears the sleeves off of his fancy suit and climbs up to save them. And he does, and it's great. And they jump away from the explosion, and then they land safely because they landed a great big pile of birdseed, because everybody loves Stan being a hero, a real hero. And it's nice because, he'd been feeling useless and then hurt when the town didn't, respond to, like, we can see he wants that approval and then they don't like him. But then when there's real conflict and danger, and that actual selflessness comes out in him, because it's there, it's just buried in a lot of grifter. And then that's what the town actually likes, which is great. And so the idea is, hooray, Stan wins. Boo, Stan is disqualified because of his extensive criminal record. It's such a great little button for the episode that, we're thinking, oh gosh, is Stan just going to be mayor now? That's an interesting turn. But no, because of course he has an extremely long criminal record, and they just read some of the crimes, which include things like pug trafficking, impersonating a dentist, snacks evasion, woodpecker baiting, general indecency, golf cart theft, bingo fraud, among others. And that is just amazing. I really, it's such a funny little punchline for the episode. But, you know, to have, like, I don't think that the show ever really gives Dipper and Mabel a hard enough time for the idea that they should just, gosh, my camera is vibrating or something. Yeah, interesting. The hard enough time for thinking that mind control is the solution to their problem. Yeah, something's vibrating my floor just a little bit right now. As maybe someone in upstairs or downstairs is doing something that's making my camera vibrate just a little bit. Anyway, I think we're just about done. So the new mayor is actually Taylor, who we learn, or is it Tyler? I think it's Tyler. Tyler. Gosh, I'm trying to find I'm looking at the. We were also introduced to the new townsman, Tad Strange, which is pretty great. It is Tyler, not Taylor. Tyler Cutebiker is the last name as it's pronounced, even though it's clearly spelled Cute Biker, which is silly. He's the get 'em guy, and there's lots of funny payoffs on that when he's awarded mayor and he's like, got him. And it's like, yay. Which is, it's a very silly, and so I feel like it's a nice, fun, sort of heartwarming finish for the episode. You know, the evil was defeated, and we don't have to end up with Stan as actually mayor, because that seems terrible. But then, of course, the stinger is the discovery that Gideon's still in prison, and now his plan having been thwarted, because, of course, the plan all along was to have Bud win as mayor and then pardon Gideon to get him out. But now we see him, he has drawn a Bill Cipher summoning circle and says he's ready to make a deal. Boom, boom, boom! Yeah, so we'll see what happens next week as we continue the rewatch with the episode The Last Mabelcorn. So we will check that out next week, and in the meantime, I will talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.